ジョージョーの野郎。鬼姫が完全にぶっ潰しやがって。
Oh my god. Hello, welcome to Joe Consumes Cinema. I'm your host, fingers crossed for early parole, and today we have Ashita no Joe, episode 23. So really good episode last one. Rikishi got out, kind of getting set up on his path towards, becoming a pro boxer once more, challenging for the Japanese title, and then even eventually challenging for the world title. So he's off to the races with, following his dream. We still have Joe, inside. Oyama got out, but, I think at some point, it's hinting very strongly that Dangpei plans to open up a gym, start teaching a bunch of different people boxing. I'm going to guess Joe being the star pupil. Also, Oyama's probably going to show up, Nishi too, when, he gets out. And yeah, that's where I think the story is headed right now. Part of me thinks going into this episode, we're going to get a time skip. If that doesn't happen, the other thing I'm thinking is, he has 8 more Ashita no Joe lessons to learn. So hopefully we get, either right to it with Dangpei or the time skip, and he just gets out. And, the Ashita no Joe lessons come with each, opponent, something like that. The more I watch this show, the more I see parallels between it and Hajime no Ippo. So yeah, I think it's pretty clear at this point that Hajime no Ippo drew heavily on this to create its own storyline. There are key differences. It's not like a ripoff or anything like that. I'm not saying that. I'm a really big fan of Hajime no Ippo, so yeah, the fact that it's so similar to that show, it's a really cool thing, and it explains why, I took to it like, a duck to water, basically. But yeah, I am eager to get to this one, but before we begin, as always, remember to blank, blank, and blank. Still very much a small channel, so every like, comment, share, subscribe that we can get really helps out. Really appreciate it. Patreon link down below. With that, let's get right to it. Omega Ake Tatake 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 Ashite wa Kido Ashite wa Dochida. Is Joe still feeling a bit aimless without Rikishi here? He's getting out, and Joe's still stuck here. Farewell, Juvenile Prison. Well, Nishi's getting out for sure. Hopefully this means Joe is too. They started at similar times, but I believe Joe's sentence was longer.
Oi, Nishi.
It's boredom, loneliness. Jumping rope is probably one of the simplest but most effective exercises, especially for a boxer. I really like this. Joe keeping his mouth shut and just doing what he's told. It's working him to the bone, but, nothing else for him to do in here, so might as well just train as hard as he can. Oh, he's gonna win it back on. Don't get in trouble.
自分も若かりし日、アマボクサーとして鳴らした教習を忘れがたく、自ら名誉会長に収まって設立したジムで。
Okay, that's kind of what I thought. He had a boxing background, but, you know, didn't have a super good career.
なんて連中だ。
先生のジャブも素早い。正確です。力士なし。追い込んで左右の連打。今後は危ない。回り込めるか。
Oh, he got countered.
力士ピンチ。ロープに追い詰められた。
He was doing really well, but he might have just lost that round. Looks pretty tired.
コーナーの下から白木陽子さんお見えになるでしょうか。力士またロープに詰まって、いやかわした。ロープを離れるには空後に3発。ややすくもきました。力士構成です。まるで生まれ変わったようならしい。
そんなボクシングにいつまで手間かかってんだい。右だ右だ右のアッパーだ。
I think that's it.
決まった。よーし立つなよ。立ってくるなよこの野郎。そのままおねんねしてるんだよじっと。やったーやりやがったな力士。よくやってくれたぜ。そうだそうやって高々と手を挙げてもらえ。お前の勝利をみんなに見てもらうんだ。この矢吹がね。
Yeah, me too, but
今は自分の強さを存分に見せつけるがいいぜ。俺がシャバに出て同じそのリングの上でお前をズタズタに叩きのめす日が来るまでよ。
yeah, there it is.
あの高慢ちきな陽光嬢様がどんな顔をなさるか、その面を拝むのが楽しみだぜ。
He's looking forward to the eventual fight.
ここ東高特等少年院を出る日が来たのである。ジョーの野郎が今日退院するんだとさ。
やつみてえなひねくれた野郎もとうとう出してもらえるのかい。
He's got the old swagger back and the whistle. I like it.
どうも教官先生方、長いことご面倒をおかけいたしまして、お辞儀をしろお辞儀を。
いやいい。
いやよ、おめえみたいながむしゃらがいなくなってよ、みんなほっとしてんで。
何をもたもたしてやがって。早くやりゃいけ。
この野郎。
He would try and get into a fight on the day he's getting fucking released.
へへだ。こっから見てるとな、動物園の猿やカバが表に出たくて騒いでるようだね。ギルリル。
Oh shit.
お見事、だまみろってんだ。
やりやがったなこの野郎。これはお返しだ。
A little dirt war.
教官に対して無礼だ。この野郎。
They're all joining in on it. That's awesome. Everybody's exhausted. This is a much more fitting end for this than an actual ceremony.
もう行っちまうのかよおい。
はい、この野郎、今度会った時はな、バケツいっぱい泥水ぶっかけてやるからな。覚えてろ。
へへ、楽しみにしてるぜ。じゃあな。じゃあ。
あばよー。バカ野郎。
散々悪態をついていた収容生たちもしばらくの間何か気が抜けたように静かだったという。
明日を目指して立ち上がる。立て立て立て立つんだジョー。Okay, took some time just to gather my thoughts. That was episode 23, another really good one. Things start off with Nishi finally leaving the prison. You know, Joe caused a lot of problems, and I believe he had a longer sentence anyway, so of course the two of them were not going to be getting out at the same time. Nishi never really got into trouble for the most part, and if he did, it was always, you know, tangentially being involved with Joe, but Yeah, he gets out because of good behavior, and I think that he said, like, overcrowding or whatever. It's a sad farewell for him, but, Joe is left in there pretty much alone. And while he's training hard with Dangpei, doing a lot of important work there, jump rope in particular is like super important for a boxer. Like he's very aimless in this episode for the most part. Up until he stumbles upon, the guys are all watching boxing on TV, and then sure enough, Rikishi makes his featherweight debut. About that, we know Rikishi as a lightweight, not a featherweight, so apparently he's dropped a weight class. I think a full weight class. And yeah, it was interesting seeing that because I think that's more in line with Joe's actual weight, featherweight, and I think it might have been done purposefully by Rikishi, planning ahead for the day when, Joe gets out, starts becoming a boxer, if he can really live up to that expectation, and they can have their actual, the rematch, the third fight. In the prison, they're not really super concerned with weight classes. Oyama is, like, not in anybody's weight class that he's fought. Joe especially, Rikishi too, and it's like they didn't really care so much about that, but the boxing world absolutely does care about weight classes. So that move had to have been made by Rikishi, dropping from lightweight, I think, which is like his natural weight, to a featherweight, which means he's cutting a lot of water weight, which adds a little something extra to the dynamic there because that could potentially sap his strength. Cutting water weight when you're already in like really good shape is very draining and difficult. I think, that could be something that comes into play like at a future episode. It's leading towards, the finale being Rikishi and Joe finally have that third fight. And that's something to take into account now before, we actually get to that point. But just something I picked up on. So Rikishi's opponent was pretty tough. He was doing okay initially, but then made a slight mistake, got countered and dropped, and then was getting pretty beat up on. His boxing gym is the Shiraki boxing gym, and it was revealed by the announcer that the grandfather, rich philanthropist, I guess, he's very passionate about boxing, and the reason why is because even when he was, in his younger years, he attempted to become a boxer, wasn't very good at it, so, had a underwhelming career is how I think they stated it, but that happens a lot. A lot of times people who are super passionate about, fighting and boxing try their hand at it and it doesn't, go too well. It doesn't mean they don't have, really good insight and knowledge of the sport that, they've dedicated themselves to. It just means that, it's a lot tougher to actually do it than it is to, watch it. But Rikishi comes back out and starts doing a lot better, and Joe is really getting into it, and he's like rooting for Rikishi to win. Everybody was taken aback by it in the moment, but then he reveals his hand of like why he wants Rikishi to do well. It's like, make yourself as famous as possible, do as well in the boxing ring as possible, because when I get out of here, it's my turn at you again, and I'm going to finish it. So yeah, he's got his motivation and his fire back, and he gets it, right before we get that time skip that I had talked about and I was thinking that they may do, and sure enough, they did it. The previous episode was the last time we actually heard the narrator's voice, and we heard his voice again here, and every time they've done it, there's been, a time skip. In classic Joe fashion, his release ceremony isn't an actual ceremony. He just goes up to the fence line where the guys have all, gathered around to say goodbye, but really just tell him off because, he's very antagonistic to all of them. And even though towards the end, things calm down for the most part, he's still Joe and, they have to respond to him how they have to respond to him. I just think it was absolutely perfect how, he went up to the fence line, started insulting them as they insulted him. And then it turned into like basically a dirt clod war. And that's really fun. That is the perfect send-off for somebody like Joe. Even the narrator said after he left, his absence was felt by everyone there. And, it was like quieter, but it was like too quiet for them. So there's a kind of like grudging respect and a bit of camaraderie, even though, again, very hostile relationship between Joe and the inmates from the very start. But yeah, now I think we're off to the races. Joe is finally free. Dangpei is going to start that boxing gym. Very confident, we're going to get Joe training first of all. Nishi's probably going to pop back up. Oyama's probably going to pop back up. Next episode should be really cool, and I'm eager to get to that, and I'm going to do that right now. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I got. As always, thanks for watching, and peace.